Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Natasha, I'm 29 and I'm living in London in the UK. I would like to speak to you today about something I'm so proud of, and that's probably the best thing I've ever done in myself, for myself, in my life, and that is deciding to get sober. I remember in the first few days, especially weeks and months, I would often look at YouTube videos, looking at people's journey, their sober journeys, and 3 months sober, and 6 months sober, 9 months sober, 2 years sober, 5 years sober, just to give me that motivation. And because I had so many questions that I wanted answering along the lines of, is it supposed to be that painful? Will it get any better? Is it worth it? And so, yeah, I just want to speak honestly and openly about my journey and what it was like before, what it was like in the first few months, and what it's like now, and also what I'm expecting and excited to see in my future. So I started drinking when I was 12 years old, and I'm 29 now, so I was 28 when I came into recovery. And for me, it was a life or death situation, really. My body was giving up on me. The alcohol and drugs didn't really work anymore anyway. I'd done a lot of spiritual work, so I became really conscious, to the point that if I did have a drink or took any drugs, I was so conscious of what I was doing that it didn't numb me out anymore, and it didn't do what it used to do. It just made me feel terrible, really. So it wasn't really an option anymore for me. So yeah, I started drinking when I was 12 years old. Me and my best friend at the time used to steal liquor from her parents' cabinet. Take things such as Tia Maria, rum, vodka, gin, anything that we could find, and we would just take a little bit out of the bottle each weekend and put it in something like this. And then we would go to the park and we would twizzle around playing Dizzy Dinosaurs, and we would drink it all with no mixer, no lemonade or anything, just pure alcohol. And then I would get blackout drunk, lying on the floor in a park, hanging out with older guys. I remember going into school one Monday, and somebody said, "Do you remember your knickers were hanging out and your bra was showing off?" And I was so embarrassed, but it didn't stop me from doing it. It just made me think that they were a bad person. I thought, how dare they bring that up in school? How rude. When really, what was I doing? So yeah, I started binge drinking every weekend from 12 years old. I did my first line of cocaine at 13 years old, ketamine at 13 years old. I started smoking weed at 12. Yeah, and then I think maybe around 15, I then found MDMA, speed, and then later on in my teenage years, I found psychedelics, and yeah. So by the time I was 19, I'd tried pretty much everything apart from crack and heroin, and thank God I never touched that. But yeah, I was quite heavily dependent on alcohol, especially from the age of 12, because I had no confidence, I had no self-esteem, and I used it to fit in, and make friends, because I was so shy during primary school that when I went into high school, I just would have done anything just to have friends. And I thought that if I was to drink alcohol, I'd make friends. Now, I don't speak to any of those people or see any of those people that I used to drink and use with. In fact, one of them's dead. So, yeah, one of my best friends from school died a few months ago, and it was related to alcohol. So, it does kill, and I'm so lucky, and I feel so blessed that I have managed to get sober. I often take it for granted, but like, why me? There's so many people that die every day from addiction. I'm just, yeah, I'm so blessed, and I'm so grateful that I'm still here to tell this story. So yeah, I started drinking when I was 12, using drugs and alcohol, all up until I was 28. So that's, I can't math. I think it's about 15 years, something like that. It's a long time to be heavily using. And I kind of went in and out of depending on different substances. So I'd go 6 months where I would just smoke cannabis every day, all day. I'd wake up, smoke, and then other times 4 years ago, about 6 years ago, I managed to really cut out cannabis. But I was heavily addicted to that. I remember when I quit the first time, I stayed awake for 5 days because my body just wasn't used to not having it. I was so wired. And I would do things like taking a load of sleeping tablets to try and put me to sleep because I couldn't sleep without the weed. The withdrawals were crazy, horrible, and the nightmares that came with it. So yeah, I kind of got sober in stages, I guess, because I did give up cannabis 4 years before I got sober off alcohol and just fully sober. So what led me to finally take the leap was because my best friend from uni ended up going into a rehab because their using got quite bad, and they went into a private rehab in the Cotswolds, and I went to visit, and I'd been out the night before, and I thought my friend wouldn't notice, but I probably was still intoxicated. And then when I got back home that day after visiting them at the rehab, they called me and said, look, Tash, I love you to bits, but I need to protect my sobriety, and I know that you completely mash up, let's say, when you came to the rehab today, and if you carry on, I can't hang out with you when I get out. And that really deeply hurt me because it was like my only friend, and still is like my best friend and only close friend, really. So I'm glad that I managed to get sober because I didn't want to lose my friend. But that's, the best thing that ever happened to me. And I have always been interested in self-growth and spirituality. And when my friend was telling me about the 12 steps, I found it so interesting. So I called them every day and I said, whatever they're teaching you in there, can you pass it on to me so I can do it at home? And I was still drinking and using, but I did a life inventory. So I just wrote my life story from birth till then, and that was the start of me working the 12 steps because I found that really interesting. And as an addict, I'm a really self-centered person, so of course I love writing about myself and talking about myself. So I love it. That's just typical addict behavior. So when they got out, I then went to an AA meeting with them for support. I never thought I was an addict at this point. I thought that I was just going for support, and I thought I was trying to give up alcohol and drugs to support my friend, not thinking that I needed to, not thinking that I had an issue, not seeing that I cannot have one drink. I cannot have one line. I have to get completely black out. And I will drink and use until I'm completely out cold. And I've got myself in such dangerous situations. I'm so lucky to be alive. Once my friends found me face down in a jacuzzi in somebody's basement, like I was pretty much drowning and I was alone. I'd gone down there on my own and I blacked out in the jacuzzi, and luckily they pulled me out and I was still alive. But that's just one of the many, many, many things that has happened. Once I was on ketamine and I was drying my hair in Ibiza Hard Rock, and the sink was full with water for whatever reason, and for some reason I just put the hairdryer, because I was basically in a K-hole, and I put the hairdryer in the sink, and I was having like huge electric shock through my body. My body was like thrown across the room. One of the many, many things that I've done. So, yeah, so glad to be sober. Oh my gosh. So this was 2 years ago, and so I went to the AA meeting for support, and I was so judgmental when I went into those rooms, because I'd always thought of AA as being old, smelly men that sit with a brown bag and a can of Stella on the park. But I went into these rooms and I realised that these people looked way healthier than me. They were dressed way better than me. They smelt better than me. They were better groomed. They looked happier. They had light in their eyes. Me, I was puffy. I was overweight. My eyes were bloodshot. My hair was really thin. I looked awful. And I was not a nice person. I just craved attention. Really, I craved attention. I also had a problem with men and dating and you know what. Just anything to escape reality. By the time I found recovery, my life was really going downhill. I would wake up in the morning and I had poppers next to my bed. I would just take some poppers just to get out of bed. Crazy. And also, the job I was in at the time, I would have vodka in a water bottle like this and I'd be drinking it at my desk. Yeah. And I would have hookups on my lunch break, as well as every night of the week. I drink every night of the week, and I would use meeting clients as an excuse to get absolutely hammered and go back to the office drunk. So I was a mess, and I had no savings. I don't have a driving license. Somehow got 2 university degrees, but that's probably like my only achievement in life. Yeah. So, and getting sober. So what it was like in the first few months, absolute hell. I had the worst nightmares, and I still do have some using nightmares now and then, but these were horrific. It's like all of the trauma that I hadn't processed or felt came back tenfold, and it felt like it was all happening in that moment. So the first few months that I was kind of withdrawing and coming off everything and staying sober, I was in so much pain emotionally. I can't even tell you how much pain I was in. It felt like I was being set on fire. I couldn't sleep. I was being tortured. And I felt so sorry for myself. It felt like I was divorcing alcohol. Mainly, I say alcohol because that was my predominant favorite drug at the time that I gave up. But at other times in my life, it's been ketamine, cocaine, weed, sleeping tablets. So was really hard to, and I was really sad thinking, oh, I'm never going to go to a festival and get off my rocker again. Or I'm never going to be sat at the afters talking absolute garbage. These things at the time, I was genuinely really, really upset about losing. And when I look now at me going into early recovery, worrying about those things, I'm thinking that girl was delusional. She was cray. And I'm still a bit crazy. I'm probably always going to be a bit crazy, but I'm definitely rooted in reality now. I see things for what they are. I don't think I'm anywhere near as delusional. I was on another planet. Completely on another planet. Even when I was sober, like during the day sometimes, I was crazy. Thoughts that were going on in my head were crazy. Crazy anxiety. Yeah, just really materialistic as well. I was obsessed with materialism, money, showing off on my Instagram. It was so cringe. So cringe. So yeah, first few months were hell. I felt really sorry for myself. I had to cut off a lot of friends. You can't keep hanging out with people you used to use with. There's no way. It's not going to work. You have to. I've seen friends that try to get sober and then they keep hanging out with the people that they used to use and drink with, and it just not going to happen. I had to be prepared to be lonely. It was so lonely for the first year. So lonely. I felt like the only person in the world. I felt like nobody got me, and I felt like I'd never have friends again. But I felt like going back to the alcohol and drugs wasn't an option either. So I felt like it's like if a big snow mountain collapsed behind me and pushed me onto the road of sobriety. That's why I say I don't think it was a choice. I don't feel like I chose it. I feel like I was forced towards it, otherwise I would have died. Like, I can't go back in the snow, I'll just be buried and crushed and die. So I had no choice but to get sober. And it's taken me this long I'm 18 months sober, and it's taken me this long to be confident enough to talk about it and not feel embarrassed or ashamed about it. It's the best thing I've ever done, and I'm so proud to say that I am an alcoholic and I am an addict, because the fact that I've been through that and survived it and I understand addiction, and I'll always be an addict and I'll always be an alcoholic, and I now have a program that I can work every single day to make sure that I never fall back into those habits. And they say that your addiction is always doing press-ups in the parking lot, meaning it's always waiting for you. And I know that if I had a drink or took a drug, I could quite easily spiral and go straight back to where I was very quickly. So yeah, after a year, I started to make new friendships, and I started to feel my emotions and learn about my emotions. And yes, at first they were negative emotions and they were really painful, but then the joy came, and I'm walking down the street feeling high as a kite, thinking, wow, this is what happiness feels like. Everything felt brighter. It's like I'm looking through a new lens. It's just, I can't put it into words. If you're watching this and you're thinking about getting sober, just do 90 days. Just do today, just for today. Just keep going, please. It's the best thing you'll ever do. I've also lost 3 stone in weight. My skin is completely cleared up. I'm not even wearing makeup right now. I've got a little bit of tiny blush, but I'm not wearing makeup. And my skin used to look like a pepperoni pizza all the time. And I have so much more patience now. I have interest in people. When I go to events and to celebrations, I'm more focused on what I'll wear and the present I'll take and the conversation I'll be having and taking photos and memories. Whereas before, all I was focused on was pre-drinking when I was getting ready. I would turn up hammered. I wouldn't remember anything. I was a complete liability. I used to annoy everyone. I'd spill things, smash things, rinse all the money in my account. It was horrendous. I have horrendous stories that I'll probably make another video about. But yeah, I just wanted to share my experience and just share that I'm so happy that I'm 18 months sober and I can finally see a future for myself. And I hope that if you're watching this and you're going through the early days, that you feel that there is hope and you feel motivation to carry on. So thank you for listening to me.